Welcome everyone, hopefully this is live. I'm Councillor Kimberly Barrett, I'm Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Greening the City. A little bit of housekeeping and safety information. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please do evacuate the room and the public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts and please assemble by the statue of Queen Victoria outside. To comply with the Guildhall Trust fire marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. So in regards to live web streaming, may I draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting will be webcast to allow the public to watch the meeting if they so wish to do so. Everyone speaking will be on camera. Members of the press and public are permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone use the microphones? Remember to switch them off when you're finished or the camera will remain on you. So if I start first with introduction, so I will go from left around, if that's okay.
Anna Martin, Democratic Service.
Tom Bell, Principal Planning Policy Officer.
Judith Smythe, Councillor for St Jude Ward and spokesman on this committee.
Thank you. We've also got Toby Payne here as well from the news, so welcome Toby. Any apologies at all?
I'm not aware of any.
No apologies, okay. And no deputations from what I could see. Perfect. Well, if that's the case, let's get on. It's a one-item agenda today, so let's get straight to the item number 3, Local Nature Recovery Strategy for Hampshire, and I will pass back over to Tom Bell to discuss this.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. I'll start with a bit of background on the Local Nature Recovery Strategy. So the Local Nature Recovery Strategy is a document and map that's been put together by Hampshire County Council, so they're the lead authority on the LNRS, and PCC act as the supporting authority. So at various stages in the process, we are requested to give our permission for the LNS to proceed. So the LNRS consists of a series of reports and associated online mapping which covers the whole of Hampshire County. So within the reports there are a number of priorities that have been set out for nature recovery across Hampshire. Within Portsmouth, the focus for the priorities, so the priorities are divided into 2 main categories, areas that are of particular importance for biodiversity. So these are existing biodiverse and protected areas such as the Portsmouth and Langston Harbours SPAs and the triple SI at Portsdown Hill. And then there are a number of additional areas that are identified as areas that could become of importance to biodiversity. And within the LNRS, Hampshire County Council have identified 2 main types of habitat within Portsmouth that are identified as ACBs. And these are sinks, so sites of importance for nature conservation, which are currently in poor condition and we look to improve, and Solent Wader and Brent Goose sites. The City Council has previously been consulted upon the LNRS back in April 2025, and we suggested 2 additional areas that should be included as ACBs, these being the Hillsey Lines, so making the whole of the Hillsey Lines an area of that could become of importance for biodiversity, and Topfield at Portsdown Hill. The result of this is that the majority of the sites, nature conservation sites within Portsmouth, are covered by either the APIB or ACB designations in the LNRS. So the APIB sites are already protected in many instances, such as through national and international guidance. So, for example, the SPAs touched on. So the impact of the LNRS is probably most important in regards to the areas that could become of importance for biodiversity. And with these areas, there are some potential benefits that can be derived from being identified as an ACB. These include, if you're looking at biodiversity net gain, the sites get a 15% favouring and scoring. So any sites that, if the council or any others are trying to deliver biodiversity net gain on these sites, it is easier to do so than a site that isn't an ACB. And it is also an awareness and profile raising piece, which should help bring in external funding to focus on those particular habitats in the city. So it's very positive that so many nature conservation sites are included in Portsmouth. There have been 2 previous stages of consultation on the local plan. So in April 25, PCC was consulted through a supporting authority consultation, and then in May 25 there was a public consultation which was publicised within Portsmouth through the Planet Portsmouth newsletter. So in terms of responses to that consultation, we responded as PCC. Another local organisation that responded was the Langton Harbour Board, and there's also been quite a bit of public consultation consultation response that mentioned specifically seagrass in Portsmouth. So those consultation responses have been taken on board. We are now happy that the Hampshire County Council have captured the habitat within the city accurately, and have included all the right areas of habitat as ACB, which would benefit from extra investment. So coming on to the recommendations, it's recommended that the County Council endorse the publication of the Local Nature Recovery Strategy by Hampshire County Council, and note the public consultation that's taken place in the past, and that we are now satisfied that the LNRS, as with the content of the LNRS. So the next stage will be for us to respond to HCC to indicate that we're happy for them to proceed, in which case they will it will go to Cabinet, HCC's Cabinet, on the 11th of November, with publication anticipated in December. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Tom. I would normally say something, but Councillor Smythe, I know that you've got some questions and bits, so I would really like to pass it over to you so you can start asking your questions for us to respond and Tom to have a chat.
Surely, Kimberly, I think as chair you need to introduce your perspective, but if you don't want to do that, then I will... Yes, I haven't got any interest to declare, except for my lifelong love of nature.
Thank you. Sorry, yes, interest, anybody? I appreciate Councillor Smythe has said no, I don't have any interest. Any interest at all? No. So sorry for interrupting you, Councillor Smythe. No. Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. I hope people do take time to look at the document. It's something that Councillor Smythe mentioned when she came in. It is a fantastic document that has taken a huge amount of time to go into, and I truly hope people, I mean, as you can see, it's I don't like to have a lot of paper around, but I think it's a really important piece of work going forward that not just covers Portsmouth but covers the whole area, and we need to have cohesive thinking going forward across the area, especially when we will see LGR and a mayor coming forward as well. So I am pleased to see the report coming forward. I don't want to ruin what Councillor Smythe wants to say, so I will limit myself to that at the moment, because I think it's only fair, because you've raised this with me beforehand, that you get the chance to say what you're going to say, and then I will react to that as well. But thank you very much for that, Councillor Smythe, and I will certainly hand over to you now.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you. I'd like to start what is basically going to be a series of questions by just saying that the research into this and the actual document, this one called Introduction and Description of Strategy Area, the whole, all the maps, I love maps, And I've walked a lot of these places in Hampshire, and I know and love them. And I've been to try and find rare orchids in some of the places mentioned, and I've been to try and my husband and I do pick and eat fungi in an appropriate setting. I mean, I wasn't born in Hampshire, but I've grown to absolutely love the countryside, and it's nice to see how much of the area is countryside. My second passion is rivers and pollution and not polluting rivers, and seeing a river as a living thing, as Robert Macfarlane does in his recent book. And of course the coast. I'm a great sea swimmer. I've been very, very closely involved with the sea defences, and I love to see the way that nature is given a chance in the sea defences, particularly on the eastern side of Portsea Island, when we're creating places for molluscs and small sea creatures we didn't even know existed are able to thrive. So this is really close to my heart. It's wonderful. It's beautifully written. It's the kind of thing that when I had a geography degree and I looked at original sources and so forth, I remember looking at the Worcestershire County Council documents in order to inform my academic lectures and essays. This is beautiful. This is loads of information. It's taken a long time to do, and I think it is absolutely fantastic. It's beautifully written, and it's a huge resource for everybody. I don't want to give any impression that I think the officers who've written this, and indeed our people who've looked at it critically, have done anything but produce a fantastic piece of research. And enjoyable too. Mostly I throw away my council papers in an appropriate way when I've stopped using them. These, I'm going to keep them and possibly inform some of my walks in the countryside by them. They're that good. And I wouldn't dream of questioning those parts of the report. I'm not going to be one of those that says, oh, but I've walked up there and it doesn't look like that, because this is the report of the experts. And I'm a huge believer in information and expertise informing all the decisions we make. Let me just put that on the table. I don't want any person from Hampshire criticising this, because I think I do trust this as a piece of research. It's not our place as councillors to distrust technical, scientific, well-written reports. So that's the first thing I want to say, and possibly the most important, although possibly not. The thing about this is the first question I've got for Tom, can I call you Tom publicly, is to ask you what is the legal status of this. Is it something the government will be monitoring, central government, or else how else do they know that their nature strategy is going to be implemented? Is it something they will be monitoring? If so, when and how? Who will they be asking? Is it going to be on the job description for, I'll give you three kind of governance type questions at once. Is it going to be on the job description for mayors? And by that I mean, is it going to be on the job description for mayors when we do have the local government reorganisation that creates strategic mayors across Hampshire? Will they be instructed by the government to implement the findings of what I'm going to help us to write later on, a perfect neighbourhood nature recovery strategy? And to take notice of the findings, because I do worry about reform getting in and denying the science behind this. In fact, it makes me almost want to cry to think that might happen. But how else will the government know it's being implemented if they don't have a mechanism for monitoring it? And I don't see that in here. It's implied, but it's not stated. And will the mayor be given an instruction to implement this alongside quite a lot of other national legislation? Those are the first two.
So, can I just clarify the questions around monitoring, mayors, and
Just monitor. It's government requirements and monitoring and mayors.
thank you. My understanding is that I think the LNRS will be monitored as part of a wider biodiversity duty that ourselves and other local authorities have to report on. So at the moment, for example, I'm doing some work collating how we're doing on biodiversity net gain schemes in the council, so talking to development management colleagues. And so my understanding is our progress not necessarily on the LNRS, but on the habitats and the potential gains and improvements. So the conditions of sinks and things like that will all be monitored through the biodiversity duty. So coming on to your second question.
So this is subsidiary to biodiversity net gain policies and requirements?
No, so the biodiversity duty covers a wide range of environmental monitoring, and we as a council have to respond to indicate how we are improving biodiversity within Portsmouth. So it sets out both what we've done so far, but our intentions going forward, and biodiversity net gain is part of that. I was just using that as an example to illustrate the kind of things we're doing at the moment.
I just record I'm not happy with that answer, although I can see why you've given it. There's no, it's that it seems to me is subsidiary to this document. This is the local nature recovery strategy for Hampshire. And obviously the measurements of BNG and the requirements for increasing net, for BNG are going to feed into achieving this strategy. And that's how it reads.
Yep, so I mean biodiversity net gain is a separate piece of legislation. There are overlaps with it, so as I mentioned earlier, that there's this 15% uplift that's added to sites that are identified as areas of that could become of importance for biodiversity through the LNRS. So it acts as a tool to help deliver the improvements that the local nature recovery strategy identifies.
Well, that's particularly apposite for an urban, tightly built urban area. But it's not a good way of applying what needs to be done in non-urban areas. And I think it's 80% of Hampshire is non-urban, or there's a lovely statistic earlier on. It just doesn't quite answer the question. If we're doing that to grasp at straws and make sure we are measuring it, then that's rather sad.
Okay. So
will it be part of the Mayor's instructions?
It's going to become part of the responsibility of the Mayor or combined authority going forward. So the next iteration of the LNRS will be their responsibility. So it's one of the few documents that they actually have to pay attention to at this point.
Okay. Okay, note I say, will it be part of the instruction for mayors? And you say it'll be part of an overall responsibility, which I think is very different.
Yes, I'm not sure whether it'll be an express instruction to them.
No, nor am I. Thank you. Okay, next little set of questions, if you don't mind, is that all right, Chair? Is just to look at the executive summary briefly and just to explain exactly what I mean here. And this language is repeated all the way through the document. I went through it when I read it earlier, and I could go on, but it's best illustrated if you look at the executive summary. To be honest, I think if we recommended to Hampshire that the executive summary was rewritten, we could probably, would result in a slightly longer executive summary, but we could probably overcome most of my difficulties. So when I come to make a recommendation at the end, Chair, it probably will refer to this. Let me just read it. Can you all see this document? Executive summary. First of all, the introduction says quite clearly, the description of the area's natural environment set out in this local nature recovery strategy is exactly what it is. It's a description of how lovely Hampshire is at the moment, and it's a description of the ways in which it could be made better. But it's not a strategy, because I believe that all strategies written by the public sector should include an action checklist. I don't mean it should be a plan for every single site, although that will follow, but I do mean it should be a what will change, what will be different. Why have we got the strategy? Why strategy is about doing. It's about action. It's not just about describing something. That's the first thing. So, for example, bullet point 1, it says, these threats include increasing development, agriculture, land use changes, invasive species, pollution, recreational pressure, and climate change. You bet they do. And yet, in the text, there is remarkably little about the sites that they're describing in huge detail and what threats they're facing. I'm sorry to knock the main body of the report because I think it's beautiful, but it's beautiful in a really lovely, cheerful way. But they really don't spend time on this strategy looking at the threats. And most strategies would start with a SWOT analysis of some sort, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And this is almost the only mention of the threats in the whole document. There are intimations, but nothing. You know, I mean, the kind of think of the fly tipping that goes on in the New Forest. Try to think of the watercourses that are polluted in Hampshire. I don't need to elaborate that, but a strategy is meant to look at the threats as well, and it hardly does. They just say, there are these threats. Yes, we know that, and we're weeping about them, but actually they've got to explain where they're particularly intensive and how we do that. It doesn't really even, it does tell us at parts that the fringes of urban areas are more under threat. I think we've known that all our lives. And there are sort of intimations, but there's not an action plan to reduce those threats in a way that could be measured. Second, I'm going, it does say in the second bullet point that these are a new system of plans for nature recovery. I agree, but there's not much about planning for nature recovery in here. There's a beautiful description of what's there and what should be enhanced and so forth. They are a key mechanism for planning and delivering the natural nature recovery network. What is the network? Is it there isn't in my mind an understanding of what or who the network is. You always have to know in a strategy who is responsible for what. It doesn't just happen. Things don't just happen through the drinking water. They don't just happen through breathing the air. They happen because somebody or some group of people that have a designated role have done it. Maybe it's a technical term, I don't know, but the National Nature Recovery Network presumably includes masses of people, might include a formal committee that brings people together, but I don't see a description of it, and I don't see a description of it in relation to its authority with other bodies if it's more than just the informal. Third bullet point. They say this creates a network of shared strategies that public, private and voluntary sectors can all help to deliver. You bet they can, but they're not actually required to in this document. They're not required to do this. I mean, this is a really useful document for people who own land in Hampshire. They must think their ships come home, they've got all the research done, it's fantastic, but it doesn't tell them they've got to do anything with it. The next page, page 15, they talk about engagement and consultation, and it's nice that, you know, there is quite a lot of evidence that everybody's in favour of a strategy, even if they might have responded differently if the drafts were a bit more about, you must do this. So the second strategy on page 15. The aim of the strategy is to identify locations to create, restore and enhance habitat. It does that beautifully, providing the best opportunities to deliver nature's recovery. An opportunity doesn't have to be taken up. Nobody has to take any notice of the opportunities that are clearly described in here. And where there are opportunities to improve this further. We need to be starting talking about requirements. It includes a hierarchy of places that must not in any cost be disrupted, be changed, must be enhanced. So it says here, it actually goes as far as to say the LNRS does not dictate how land is used or limit the choices land managers have on their hand. Well, that says it all, doesn't it? Says it all. It won't make a difference to the 80% of the land in Hampshire that is privately owned and that is rural. It won't stop people, for example, running the festival in that valley near Winchester from tearing up the ground. What's it called? Boomtown, yes. My daughter used to perform there. She and other artists have stopped doing that because of the destruction to the landscape. But that shouldn't be the pressure that's on people. There is a public inquiry going on with local residents, don't like it. But if there's a lot of money to be made out of Boomtown, they're going to go on tearing up the countryside. And there used to be very lovely walks through that valley. There isn't anymore. There's vast areas where the ground has been impacted and churned up by huge... I use that as an example because we'll all remember it, but actually there are a lot of other places where that's the case. I took a group of walkers to, a group of elderly South Sea residents whose children were all at the same school 30 years ago. We go and walk once a month on a Friday, and I took them on a walk I've done hundreds of times. And the timber company itself had created a strip of muddy land so bad that we barely could get across it. And we're all pretty fit. We were doing a 4-mile walk. It wasn't a stroll for the infirm, not quite. But we simply could not get across. It was an absolute ruin of a piece of land in the national park, and in the South Downs National Park, and completely wrecked a whole piece of the walk from which there was a lovely view and all that. But I could give you a lot of examples of where... And when we dare to say this doesn't dictate how land is used or limit the choices land managers have on their land. We do have legislation where we have legal protections of the countryside, where we can enforce, where permission has to be obtained. So why doesn't this LNRS say the LNRS builds on existing legislation on, this is a quotation you might want to put in the minutes, the LNRS builds on the designation of areas with special status where landowners have to get a prior approval for doing certain activities, making certain changes on their land. It doesn't even say that. It's saying here this is completely toothless. And if we have, for example, as far as I understand their policies, a reform group government in Portsmouth, then they can just put their fingers up to biodiverse net gain as well. And that just makes me want to weep. I'm not saying they will, I'm just saying it's possible. Look down to bullet point number 4. In delivering nature recovery, the strategy also seeks to maximise wider environmental, social and economic benefits. Lovely statement, isn't it? Wonderful. For start with, the strategy isn't a person or a group of people. The public sector is littered with times where we have strategies that are meant to do things. Strategy is a bit of paper or something on a website. It's a written document. Lots of people have input into it. But particularly a strategy that doesn't tell you what to do. That ought to be where this National Nature Recovery Network does something. We mustn't expect bits of paper to do things. Just, it's laughable, isn't it, when you look at it like that? You can quote anything I'm saying here. I'm quite, I've rehearsed some of it in other wider places over my long career in the public sector. So that statement is just completely ludicrous, isn't it? The strategy will do this. No, it won't. But also they say the strategy will help to target future effort and funding. Yeah, it might influence a few people, but it won't be that if future funding is obtained, it is a requirement that you adhere to what is said in the LNRS. Any funding coming from the central government should be absolutely dependent on not making the environment, the nature environment in Hampshire worse. I mean, that's pretty minimal in itself, isn't it? Because somebody's got to measure it. Let's just be minimal if we want to. The strategy will help. And then it says the LNRS, again, it's not a person. This is a bit of paper. Doesn't dictate how land is used or limit the choices land managers have on their land. Again, I'm pretty shocked by that. What's the point of it? In cities, biodiverse net gain is a good thing. I'm fully behind it. But then the next one, in delivering nature recovery, this strategy also seeks to maximise. Well, it's the same thing, really. Using the next one at the bottom there, where there are opportunities of recovering and enhancing biodiversity. Now, opportunity is a really good word. You can see an opportunity, somebody else can suggest an opportunity, but it doesn't say, get on and do it. Opportunity is just exactly that. It's an idea or a concept that may or may not be responded to. Over to the next bit of page 15. First on the top. Oh, well, yes, the bullet point at the bottom of page 15 on the left carries on to say, we'll deliver the knowledge that the LNRS will deliver. LNRS doesn't deliver, it's people that have got to deliver for nature recovery set out in the measures map, which combines both ABCs and non-statutory APIBs that are known to be in poor condition. So we do know something about what needs to be done, but we're not telling people to do it. Using this mapping and data, the next bullet point, where habitats can be and are being created or restored. Can be. If I was a particular sort of voracious landowner, Boomtown land is a good example again. I would just put two fingers up to that and say, it only says can be. It doesn't say must be, must do. Which really undermines the quality of this report, doesn't it? It really does. Oh yes, we know this, a rare fungus grows down here. We know this, but we're going to ignore it. And then the next bullet point, through extensive consultation, the LNRS has developed, again, it's a bit of paper, not a group of people. And it's not clear what the group of people, I mean, it's clear from the process described in here that a lot of people have been involved in it, but it doesn't give them any responsibility, really. Potential measures to suggest, it says suggest actions, so it's suggestions, it's not must do, and it's about potential measures. That language is pathetic, and we want something to change as a result of this document, and where the people who've contributed the document will take responsibility for the consequences. And there is an idea here that these actions would help improve, connect and expand important natural areas. Good, hooray, raise the flag, but there's absolutely nothing that says how that would be done. Who would have to meet? Who would have to observe it needed to be done? Who would be responsible for walking around all the footpaths in Hampshire to see where it's not being done? And I could go on. The LNS provides guidance for organisations and individuals on where to focus their efforts and what actions to take. I wish it did provide guidance. It actually doesn't do it very strongly enough. And the last thing is, you know, it's nice, optimistic stuff. Show where and how we can deliver the Lawton principles, bigger, better and more connected spaces. Absolutely. But the document doesn't follow through clearly enough for me to believe that would happen. And again, these schemes offer payments for a wider range of actions. Let's start putting down what we know about payments that might come and what the threshold would be for anybody to get those payments. What would they actually have to do or stop doing? I'm not going to go through the whole report like that. You'd be heartily relieved to hear. But actually it's summed up by the page 16. The LNRS, this LNRS presents a key opportunity to reverse the decline of the county's habitats and species by providing the direction needed to create a biodiversity-rich environment. That's exactly what it does. It provides an opportunity, but it doesn't say, despite the amount of public money and consultation that's gone into it, doesn't say this must be done. Now then we get on to the beautiful bit of the document here. And we have at the end a series of outcomes. Now if priority outcomes, you know, these are fine. If I'll have a perpetual, ongoing and amusing and important dialogue going with officers and members of this authority, people know that, about not spelling out outcomes. And these are outcomes. They are, but they don't tell us how many and where and when. it is a measure, but it doesn't tell you who's going to measure those. It doesn't tell you whether it's central government's going to have a helicopter view of the whole country and get those things sorted out nationally. I think not. We know government is trying to increase civil service and increase the cost of the burden of central government. It doesn't actually say local authorities have to do that. It doesn't actually say the mayor has to do it when we get the new mayoral authority. It doesn't say whether it's down to Natural England or one of the quangos that already exist. It's like the kind of picking it up through the drinking water point that I'm making, which is amazingly prevalent in the local authority and public sector written. It sort of says that it's going to be done, but it doesn't say who's going to do it and where effort will be targeted and where priority funding would be put in to help with this. And I'm glad that there is an implication, at least there is some funding to help get this done, although I think that probably it's something we need to do, first of all, through the planning system. So I don't know if do you want to comment on any of that? I can see you. Yes, and then I've got another little section of things. And then I'm done.
Thank you. So, looking at the national guidance around implementation of LNRSs, and I'll just read this.
What page are you looking at?
This is the government. DEFRA. I'll show you afterwards if you like.
No, I think it's something that should be done in the public arena. That's why I've given a formal speech, because this is a public committee and there are lots of people out there very, very concerned with this stuff.
Just find the exact bit.
Please.
No, that's fine. So this relates to the Environment Act 2021.
What page?
Just the right
part. There's mention of the Environment Act straight away in the executive summary. I don't know.
Yes, there is, and
but there was somewhere
across
else, but I can't think which page it is. So.
Well, I think it needs to be spelt out much more. Because the Local Environment Act is what brought into being the need for these strategies. And it needs to be spelt out. Actually, the last government did some quite good legislation around these things, which seem to have been systematically ignored by themselves in the last few years of the Conservative government. Well, I don't want you to put you on the spot, but I have read this, every single word of this, and I don't think it's sufficient. That is part of what I want to be part of the introduction, is who requires this, who's going to monitor it, and who is going to say we're doing well or doing badly.
Yeah.
And
So
it's, you know,
pick up on those points.
sure.
The so the LNRS is referenced in policy 39 of our emerging local plan, which is going to be covered later on.
What page?
It's, I'm not sure of the page off the top of my head. It's policy.
Is it priorities and potential measures?
So this is in the local plan, not.
Okay,
The
what
LNRS,
page
so-
is it? You've got the same report as I have.
It is page 218 of the local plan that was published back.
Gosh, you have to wait that long to find it, do you? That's interesting. 218?
Yeah, so point 3I of policy PLP 39.
Just a minute while I find it, please. $220. 218, okay. Not much written on that page, but yes. No, what I've got for P208 is a lovely description of the Sea Aster bee.
So this is our local plan, not the Hampshire Local Nature
Oh, our
Recovery.
local plan,
Yes.
okay. Yes, I'm familiar with our local plan, I have cross-references, I understand that, but that's not what we're talking about.
So within our local plan, within policy PLP 39, we include a requirement to, so it says development process should take account or take opportunities to contribute and deliver to the aims and objectives of the relevant biodiversity strategies, including the local emerging nature recovery strategy. And so what
Yeah,
this
I mean, just to be quite clear, I think our local plan is brilliant. Got
Yeah.
no problems with that at all. But where does it say in here that local plans must all contain detailed descriptions of what's required?
it is covered in legislation, so local plans should have regard to local nature recovery strategies
Regard to, what does that
within
mean?
their areas.
What does that mean? I could have regard for something and not do anything.
So we need to prepare policies that reflect the local nature recovery strategies that cover areas. In our instance, that would be the Hampshire LNRS. And
The NMS doesn't tell us to do anything, so it doesn't have the teeth it needs to.
No, and I don't think that is specifically a problem related just to the Hampshire LNRS. It is that wider guidance I was referring to, and it is up to ourselves and others to put those teeth in place. So what we've done as a council is write a planning policy that allows us to take the LNRS into account in making decisions going forward. We're looking to work up our own biodiversity and greening strategies as a council, and in doing so we will take account of the LNRS within that process and the measures that have been identified for within the city. So we're going back to the sinks that need improving, the areas that are protected for brent geese and waders. So I guess what I'm saying is that, yes, I agree. The wording of the LNRS, if you were trying to use it as an implementation strategy, would ideally be stronger. But it's the nature of the type of document. It's not got quite the teeth to do that, and it's up to us, and it's up to other local authorities and other bodies that are doing implementation in regards to nature to put those policies and teeth in place to allow the delivery. It is, as you said, a kind of a background.
Do you know what? I was a town planner and I have town planning in my blood. If I was an inspector looking at our local plan, and I've always been worried about this, I would probably look at this and say, well, they're going beyond what they have to do. I like what you've written in the local plan. I've supported it publicly and privately throughout. But it's not down to us. This is a Hampshire scheme. And it's not enough for us to say, well, the Hampshire scheme's a bit weak, we're going to do it, because that makes us very vulnerable to an inspector saying, do you know what, or not even reading the Hampshire scheme to see how relatively toothless it is. I don't think that's... this discussion is about this document, and I want it to enable and encourage us to do all the good things that we've described in our draft local plan.
And I think it does, and it sets the background and the context, and it identifies the areas of habitat that are most important within the city, the areas that could become of potential importance for biodiversity, and it sets out a series of measures that indicate how you could potentially do that. And it is for us as a council to look to implement that through either planning through our local plan or through wider strategies such as our emerging biodiversity strategy going forward. And I think that it is a shame that maybe it's not stronger, but that is not necessarily the fault of Hampshire County Council in the preparation of this. It is more the framework within which they're working.
Okay, I hear what you say. I don't want to argue with you because you've done a great job in the local plan, and that's not what we're about. But for us to just approve without any description of what is lacking in this plan, the plan, and relatively sit back and say, we've got all good stuff in our local plan, isn't enough. Because my third question, and my last question before I make a statement about what I think we should be saying to Hampshire about this, is I don't think there's enough in the LNRS that helps any authority across Hampshire to make planning decision based on it. Like a application, planning application.
So, in respect of the content of the LNRS, as we've covered, it identifies areas that are already biodiverse and areas that could become more important for biodiversity. There is a significant amount of overlap between that and existing environmental designations. So if you're taking the areas that are already biodiverse, you've got SPAs, you've got SSSIs, sinks, so there's already a good degree of protection in there. In respect of the areas that could become more biodiversity, the ones that are most prevalent in the city are sinks in poor condition and Solent Wedder Brent Goose sites, and both of those are protected already through local plan policies. The sinks on their own merit, and the Brent Goose Wadder sites because of the supporting habitat for the SPA and the protected species that use it. So we have the teeth in the policies in our emerging plan to protect these areas of land already, and what the LNRS does is add extra information and detail on the species and the wedges and the way we could do that on these pieces of land, and it's something we would look to do in the future through biodiversity strategy. We're looking to get extra resources in through the Nature Towns and Cities bid and other methods in order to implement that and produce a biodiversity strategy for the city that is currently lacking.
Chair, just to confirm, I have every faith in the existing setup with, broadly speaking, a Green cabinet and supported by my own party, which is going to push this agenda as hard as we can go, with a Green agenda. But with these strategies last for many years, and this strategy is not robust enough to enable this to stick if the political scene changes. Now, my very last thing I wanted to say, which is short and to the point, is that I don't think you should approve these recommendations which are written out on page 2. Is this another meeting coming in?
Yes, it's 2 o'clock cabinet meeting.
Okay, well, it can in a minute, but I'll finish what I'm saying. Hugh, I don't mind if you listen. You obviously come and listen, and we've got 4 minutes, which is what I need. I wouldn't advise you, and I'm only in an advisory capacity, to just sign the recommendations, to endorse the publication, to note the consultation process, and to note that we're satisfied with the content of the LNRS. I think that this would be what I would like to suggest you did, to give credit for or to admire, or endorse isn't quite enough, the local nature recovery strategy in terms of the research and the descriptions of the areas and that sort of thing. But to require further attention to be given to the, let's point at the evidence, sorry, the summary, executive summary, summary, and probably it would need some amendment through it to give the document more teeth. In other words, firstly, to name the agency that's going to make the difference. You can't say a strategy will do something. A strategy is a bit of paper, not any designated person or people. So the first thing is to note that it's not clear who would do this. A strategy can't do something. It's a piece of paper. The second thing is to be more clear about the threats and how those in authority will respond to the threats where they are real, because they are, but they're not mentioned much in the text. And the third thing is to ensure that there is a chain of accountability involving existing and future people with agency, to ensure that this, the wonderful wealth of technical and research that's gone into this actually results in actions. And I'd be very happy if you wanted me to just help you further with that wording. It's difficult to do on the hoof. But otherwise, this is a beautiful document. It describes nature in Hampshire like I've never seen before. But it is not going to result in action as it stands now. And the last thing I would say, this is not a criticism in any way of our local plan, but I do fear that our local plan won't stick if this document that's going to sit above it isn't stronger.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair.
No.
You did say, because I was on my own, that I could, and I hope it's been a little bit enjoyable.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smythe. I really appreciate, honestly, as someone who goes through reports and gets annoyed when other councillors don't go through reports, can I just say help? And I can see Councillor Mason, who's come in, nodding as well. I am so pleased, and thank you so much for taking the time to go through the report completely with a fine-tooth comb, and I absolutely understand and appreciate the points that you've made. I was wondering, so as you've been speaking, I've been taking a couple of notes in regards to the recommendations, and I'll try and do this quickly, but I want to do this properly because I know there's another cabinet meeting is starting in 3 minutes. But in regards to the recommendations, and very happy to take notes, I wanted to potentially add either to one of the bullet points or to add a fourth recommendation along the lines of perhaps something to note that concerns have been raised due to the lack of clarification on a number of items, including, and sort of add what you've said there in regards, so that we have made, you know, we've looked at the report and we think it's a lovely report, but also noting that there are some things that need further clarification that Hampshire need to look to add to, you know, this really nice report, which, like you've said, it's a lovely report.
The research and development part of the report is brilliant.
Exactly.
But the rest of the report will not result in action. I think you should say it's not concerns have been raised, it's at my cabinet meeting.
What I mean for the recommendations,
so give it to somebody to own.
Yes, but that's what I mean, putting it into the recommendation, because
Yes.
that is the recommendation.
Yes, but it isn't just concerns have been raised coming through the tap water or through
Oh,
the
sorry, yes.
It
Sorry, I
is
understand what you
at
mean. Yes,
my
at
meeting,
the cabinet meeting. Yeah,
serious
concerns have
concerns.
been raised at the cabinet meeting, at this decision cabinet meeting, that further clarification needs to be made on, and then the points that you've made.
Well, yes, I think again it's not clarification. The report doesn't tell anybody to do anything. Let's use proper English language sometimes. I'm happy to help, but I know you'll do a good job. You know what I mean.
No, and like I said, Councillor, so I really do appreciate the fact that you've actually gone through, and I appreciate that you've taken the time to ask these questions, and you've brought up extremely relevant points, and I do agree with you. Tom, I appreciate time is short. Is there anything any wording that you, along the lines that Councillor Smythe and I have put together, is there something that you can recommend now that we can?
So, yeah, my understanding is Councillor Smythe's concern is very much around the I suppose the lack of specificity in the LNRS and how they intend the measures that are set out to be implemented. So a lot of that is covered in, so there's some stuff covered in national guidance, so local plans have to have reference to the LNRS, as I've touched on already, there's a specific element around strategic significance and biodiversity net gain, so you get the 15% uplift in regards to biodiversity net gain on sites that are
Chair, I really don't want to waste the Cabinet's time.
ACB
This is not the
sites.
purpose of it. I'm very happy to help. I'm here, and it is about wording,
Yep.
and it is about specificity.
Oh.
And I just think
Ian,
that
sorry, Ian's way, we have to be really quick.
Chair,
I'm afraid.
just to see if we can resolve the matter as the Chief Planner for the record, could I suggest that you add into your resolution that a delegation is given to yourself in consultation with me, and obviously you can consult Councillor Smythe as you feel fit, to clarify the concerns that you wish to add to that. So the 3 recommendations in 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3 would stand, with an additional one, delegated authority to myself in consultation with you to describe additional concerns that we require Hampshire County Council to provide a response to, and then we can pick it up on that basis.
How long have you been here, Ian? I didn't even know you were here. I'm glad you are. I think that's very helpful.
That sounds very helpful. I really appreciate
very
that,
helpful.
Ian. So as that's the case, on that regard, then I would be happy to look at those recommendations and note them and proceed forward as Ian has said. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate your input.
Bits of paper don't do it,
And
but people
thank
do.
you, and we will see you for the next meeting.